My name is Dr. Desmond Stevens, and I'm an Associate Professor in Mathematics and the Faculty Development Coordinator for the College of Science and Technology at Florida A&M University. And in this presentation, I'd like to talk to you about enhancing classroom instruction with aspects of a flipped classroom. So what are some of the common complaints we might have about our students? Well, first, they don't study. Secondly, they aren't motivated. And my favorite is, oh, and we weren't like that when we were students. But really, it could be that they haven't been motivated or engaged. It could be they're just bored. But it certainly is not because faculty don't work hard. Often when I make presentations and do workshops, faculty get defensive because they feel like administrators are trying to say that they're not working hard at what they do, because students' performance is not good. But it's not that faculty don't work hard, it's just that sometimes the things that they're trying to do may not be effective. So what's the state of STEM education? Well, according to the February 2012 PCAST report, over the next decade, it is expected that the U.S. will need to produce an additional 1 million STEM graduates. Another quote from their report says, to create vibrant science classrooms that effectively transmit knowledge and develop the intellectual attributes of scientists, college faculty must overcome the inertia of the historical habits passed from generation to generation. And what I think this means is that faculty members are not generally trained in pedagogy, and therefore they tend to teach exactly the way they were taught. Or more specifically, they tend to teach the way their advisors trained them when they were TAs in graduate school. So here's a traditional lecture hall. And if we're more fortunate and we have fewer students in our class, they might look more like this: rows of desks, or maybe even some oval type rows in a very technology-rich classroom. But in all of these cases, there's a faculty member at the front talking to the students sitting out in the audience. So what do our students start to look like after a while? Well, this is a picture. They're sleeping or they're distracted. So over the past few decades, more and more students are attending college. And what do those students look like? Well, they're digital natives. At very early ages, they learn how to use computers and iPhones and iPads and play video games. And how are their brains wired? Well, they're used to using things like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and Google. And this is how they expect to get their information. To give you some historical perspective, in September of 1998, Google was established. Shortly after that, in January 2001, Wikipedia came about. Now, if you think about a freshman who comes to school in 2015, that freshman was 1 to 3 years old when those two entities were established. This means that that child who was born back in 98, 97, 99, is used to getting all of their information from the internet. And with the advent of all the devices we have in our pocket, they're under the impression that they should be able to get that information at their fingertips now. In addition, there are for-profit institutions like the University of Phoenix that have more than 300,000 students, or Liberty University Online, which are accredited and give students other options. So the question might be, why would a student want to come to a brick-and-mortar university? Well, according to What Matters in College, students are looking for quality of relationships. That means students are looking for student-to-student relationships and faculty-to-student relationships. And this is where we have our advantage. So how are we going to do a better job? Are we going to hit the crossroad? We can go traditional, or we can do something different. We know that FAMU just finished last in state performance funding, partly due to the number of students progressing to the sophomore year with at least a 2.0 GPA. This means that we have a lot of work to do to help our freshman students, particularly in the STEM areas. According to How the Flipped Classroom Was Born by Bergman and Sams, the founders of the Flipped Classroom, they say the key is for students to identify learning as their goal instead of striving for the completion of assignments. This to me means that students need to understand that they're not trying to satisfy the faculty member by completing assignments, but they really need to pursue the goal of learning as much information as they possibly can. Now take a look at these pictures of these different classrooms. What do you notice that's different? In that first picture at the top left, students are working together in groups. To the right, there's a student presenting information on a whiteboard to other students. On the bottom left, there's a student presenting to larger groups of students, and you notice that some of the students are using their cell phones to take pictures of what's on the board. And on the bottom right, you see students using technology, most of which they brought to class with them. So what is the flipped classroom? Well, if we think about traditional instruction, there's a lecture, and then students go home and do homework. And if you listen to students, they say that the homework that they have to do is typically much more difficult than the examples that they do in class. In a flipped classroom environment, it's exactly as it sounds. Students will watch videos, read, or do other activities at home to prepare them for basic information that's needed in class. And then when they get to class, there's interactive learning in which the expert teacher is able to work with individuals or groups. So as you think about the possibility of flipping the classroom, you might ask yourself, what is the goal of any flipped activity? And are you addressing a known area of difficulty for your students? Because there are many other things that students can do outside of class to prepare themselves for the in-class activities, you might ask yourself, is video the most appropriate way to present that initial information? You might have them do activities, or you might have them read the book. And if creating a video is not as hard as you think, there are lots of options. If you have a Mac, you can certainly use PowerPoint, Keynote, QuickTime. If you have a PC, PowerPoint allows you to record your voice over any slides you might have. And my favorite app on the iPad is Doceri, which allows you to write and record your voice at the same time. So if you have existing lectures in PowerPoint or Keynote, you can convert those lectures to videos just by playing a slide presentation and talking over that presentation, such as I am doing right now. If you'd like to create something from your screen, you can use screen capture software like QuickTime, which comes with Macs. And as I mentioned, you can create videos very easily using Doceri and upload them to YouTube and other places. If you're creating videos, just remember to keep those videos 7 to 10 minutes long. Studies have shown that individuals do not maintain attention span for longer than 7 to 10 minutes. In addition, use a microphone so that the quality of your recordings are good. And consider whenever possible special accommodations for people who may be blind or hearing impaired. But if being a producer is not your thing, then there are other places that you can get videos from, such as Khan Academy, which has videos on many different subject areas, and YouTube. You can also get videos from your publisher, from textbooks, and you can certainly download and share videos from other experts in the field. But don't forget, students can
Hi,
create
I'm Derek.
videos as well.
And I'm Vincent.
I have one very specific goal today, and that's to convince you that eigenvalues and vectors are the bee's knees.
So one of the questions I'm often asked is, how do you get students to actually do the pre-assignments, watch the videos, read the material that they're supposed to before they come to class? Just remember that students will complete pre-assignments if there are accountability measures in place. So some examples of those are things like the 3-question reflective writing activity. And this is where you ask 2 free response questions that probe difficult concepts from the things that they were supposed to watch or read. And then you ask 1 question in which the students write specifically about their muddiest point, which is something that they find most difficult from the content. Or if they claim that there's nothing that's muddy, then you have them write about something they found most interesting. In addition, you could require students to write 1-minute papers when they come to class on the content that they were supposed to cover the night before. You can use technologies such as clickers to give clicker quizzes at the beginning of class, or you might give individual or group quizzes. Remember that group pressure and guilt really work. Require unprepared students to complete pre-assignments before they can participate. So if you have a group activity and there are students who have not completed their pre-assignments, put them somewhere in the room so that they can complete the pre-assignments before they can join the group. And as a faculty member, you have to remember to stay strong. If you start to give in on the requirement that pre-assignments be done before students can participate in the in-class activities, then students will stop doing the pre-assignments. So what kinds of things can you do during the class? Well, now that you don't have to cover the content in the same way that you did when you were lecturing, you can do realistic and challenging problem solving. You can work with students in small groups. If needed, you can provide students with very short lectures. You can utilize active learning strategies in class such as clickers and peer instruction and other learning activities. Students can certainly work on collaborative group work. Students might create lecture notes on a whiteboard and present them to other members of the class.
The computation you have to combine to get the right answer.
After students have created these lecture notes, they might post them to some sort of social media outlet. For somewhat longer projects, you might have students create PowerPoint or Keynote presentations. And then what might students do after class? Well, in addition to doing typical homework problems and other things that help them pull the information together, you might also have them do metacognitive activities, where students write about their learning process, how they learned. Students detail important questions to ask themselves at each step of a process. Students can write reflectively about what they have learned by blogging or writing journal entries. As I mentioned before, students could certainly then complete traditional homework problems. And after they've done this, it's time that the loop be completed and they can start their next flipped classroom activity. I hope this has been helpful. And again, I'm Dr. Desmond Stevens, Associate Professor of Mathematics and College of Science and Technology Faculty Development Coordinator at Florida A&M University.